What do you do to pick yourself up when you've had a bad day? If you're like me, the first place you go to when you need a pick-me-up is, well, anything that will just bring you a little bit more pleasure. Binge the latest series on Netflix, take a look at somebody else's best day ever on social media, have another glass and a little bit more, click that link, lose yourself in the game, buy that outfit because it will make you feel good, that loungewear. Text that person for another late night get-together that you said you'd never have again. Book your next holiday, even though that country is on the amber list because the UK is just, frankly, too depressing. Rack up a little bit more credit. How's that all working out for you? If you're a little skeptical of how you've been trying to kick back, relax and enjoy yourself when the pressure's on, your stress levels are high and life's not really going the way you want, then you're in the right place. We are in the third instalment of a series called A Skeptic's Guide to Wisdom, where we're looking at the most skeptical voice in the Bible. And yep, there is skepticism in the Bible, quite a lot of it. This week we're asking this: how do I pick myself back up again when I'm experiencing stress and pressure or even pain? How do I get back to enjoying my life? Because after all, isn't that what you're all gearing up to do right now? Maybe that's what life's all about. And I want to share with you a skeptical piece of advice that will put you on the path towards a life you can truly enjoy living. Before we talk any more about what picks us up when we're feeling down, let's address the elephant in the room. We don't want to hear it. We don't, right? Because whatever you've got to say, or whatever I've got to say about how it's probably not that great and it's probably not doing you that much good, frankly, I'm not interested, and I'm definitely not going to change. I guess we're all a little reluctant to become skeptical of what offers us pleasure and relaxation because we just crave it so dang much. In no other area of life, come on, let's face it, but in the things that bring us some form of pleasure, do we say something like, well, I'll regret this in the morning, and then go ahead with it. I mean, I don't want to listen to a talk which turns me skeptical of how good a use of my life binging Netflix is, because frankly, when I hear the ga-gung and the red letters appear on my screen, it soothes my soul. And that's the problem. Because at the time, it's great. And I guess 2 hours later, if I'm being honest, I sometimes feel kind of flat. A day later, I'm tired because I watched that one more episode before bed. 1 week later, I guess I'm stressed because I put off that paperwork that I meant to do because I couldn't tear my eyes from the screen. A month later, I'm standing on the scales and I'm kicking myself that I've put on 4 pounds because I was sat on the sofa for all that time and it just didn't feel right to do that without a bar of chocolate. And then there's the other elephant in the room: pain. Pleasure's nemesis and pleasure's best friend. Why? Because whilst pain and pleasure are thought of as opposites, pleasure is where we run when pain shows up, right? And in all truth, pain is where we fall back to when pleasure runs away. No more so are we pushed and enticed towards what brings us pleasure than when our lives fill up with stress and pain and pressure. Culturally, you and I have been taught, just outweigh the bad with the, oh, that's so good. Let loose, go wild, blow off steam, treat yourself. But you know that all this isn't quite working out the way you hoped. In fact, for some of us, and I include myself in this, our coping strategies and our coping solutions are doing us more harm than what we were trying to cope with in the first place. It may be why you now find yourself back on a diet, or with a massive credit card bill, with a search history you are quite frankly embarrassed or even ashamed of, a screen time record you would never admit to, another hangover, or another wrecked relationship, and all the deep anxiety, guilt and panic that comes along with it. Maybe that pleasure seeking has stopped being quite so pleasurable. All of us need help wising up and getting skeptical of any offer of pleasure which requires us to forget about the consequences and live like there's no tomorrow. Because consequences don't forget about us, right? And even more so, because these things that promise us pleasure are not increasing our overall levels of enjoyment, of fun and laughter, and even more dangerously, they are numbing pain and stress and pressure until it resurfaces twice as bad the following morning and we wake up groaning, oh God, what did I do? Here's the problem. My own prescriptions to ease my pain are not picking me up. And it's probably because, and I'm going to say it, they leave me feeling alone with the consequences. And God, my family, my friends, well, maybe they're just the people I'm groveling in front of, trying to get them to pick me up all over again. Now that's not working for me. It's not working for my relationships or my faith, and I bet it's not working for you. There's got to be a better way to get back to enjoying your life than that. Now, because we love pleasure, and I think in fact we were created to experience it, without a compelling alternative, we continue to pursue even the habits that we're skeptical will bring us what we want. Oh, just one more time, we say to ourselves. Now, you might think that the Bible wouldn't have anything to say about pleasure and how to enjoy your life. Maybe your perception of the Bible would lead you to believe that it probably just says you can't have fun. But in a small book of the Bible called Ecclesiastes, we find a skeptical teacher who is desperately seeking after it and has gone after it every which way he can, only to find that the things he thought would bring pleasure brought trouble with them. So he's going to teach us to become skeptical of what we're used to in order to make way for something better. Here's how this skeptic describes his own flirtation with the pleasure his culture prescribed for pain management after he found himself in a season of questioning and despair. Here's what he says. I said to myself, come, let's try pleasure. Let's look for the good things in life. I mean, because right now he couldn't find any. So he tried all sorts of things to just have a good time. We hear about it in the book, sex with multiple partners, money, big elaborate parties, the whole shebang. But he says, I found this too was meaningless. It didn't last. I still wasn't enjoying my life. So I said, laughter is silly. What good does it do even to seek pleasure? For him, even laughter had lost its goodness. He stopped holding out hope for any kind of happiness. In his search for pleasure, he'd lost the ability to experience it in anything. So after much thought, he says, I decided to cheer myself with wine. And in searching for wisdom, I clutched at foolishness. The skeptic had happened on the same problem you and I have. Pleasure as a means of distraction was quickly followed by pain, stress, and pressure, and it just wasn't working for him. He needed to find a better way to deal with his problems first if he was going to discover lasting enjoyment. Things that cause us to experience pleasure don't necessarily make us any happier to be alive the next morning, right? Because whatever had us seeking after a distraction or a pick-me-up is more than likely still there. And in this skeptic's lecture about how we go after pleasure, he happens on something that I think is so profound and that we have totally missed in our world. Here's what he says. The wise are found in the house of mourners. The fools are found in the house of pleasure. Now, that sounds like a terrible alternative, and it doesn't sound very fun, but here's what I think is so profound about this. You want to find a fool, he says? Go look for the person who's dancing away their problems the night before their final exam, or just binging Netflix after a breakup, or alone in the pub the day they've lost their job. But you want to find a wise person, he says? Go look for the person who is properly processing their problems, and don't miss this, is surrounded by others doing the same. If we're ever going to move towards something better than our current problems, stresses, and pressures, we need to be able to process our problems. And we need help with our perspective. We need to work through and properly right-size our problems rather than going to pleasure to cover over them. When it's time to mourn, we've got to go to the house of mourners. So then the skeptic sets his sights on something else, something better than chasing pleasure, something that can account even for pain, can coexist with it, and indeed something we only ever experience when we've properly processed what we're going through and have gained a fresh perspective, and that's gratitude. Think about this. Pleasure in our culture is waking up the next morning and groaning about the night before and dreading the day ahead. Pleasure like that doesn't produce lasting enjoyment. It leaves you alone with your consequences, and it doesn't do anything for your relationship with God, with others, or with yourself. But gratitude, wakes up in the morning thankful for what has been and hopeful about the day ahead. It makes life sweet. It fosters a better relationship with God, with others, and with yourself, and that's what you want, right? Maybe there is a better thing to go after, and the skeptics certainly thought so. But where to look to experience more gratitude in my life, when my life isn't the way I want it to be? I mean, maybe it's the very fact that you lack things to be grateful for that is driving you to all those pick-me-ups. And then the skeptic shares his ultimate discovery to up the gratitude levels in your life. We need to bring other people into the equation. Here's what he says. 2 are better than 1 because they have a good return for their labour. If either of them falls down, do they have to pick themselves up? No. One can help the other up. But pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them. Though one may be overpowered, 2 can defend themselves. And a cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken, he says. In my Bible, this chapter has the title, The Advantages of Companionship. Here's something cool. Do you know where the word companionship comes from? Literally, it comes from the Latin con panis, which means with bread, as in the person who shares bread with someone else. And I love that picture because it basically unlocks the key to good friendship. Share the regular, basic things as often as possible. The skeptic recommends that we should all find a bread friend, and 2 bread friends are even better. And I love that because it gives us such a simple habit to adopt to find people we can share our lives with. Just share regular routines with other people as often as you can. Okay, so you're thinking, all this for that revelation, thanks. Bear with me. Now, of course, you dream of great friendships. I dream of great friendships. But honestly, if you're like me, we just don't have those kind of people around that often. We definitely haven't over the past year, which is maybe why we've gone to all our other pick-me-ups. And those people aren't there on those evenings when we're bored and fed up and we just want to go to that bottle of wine, which frankly is less effort and we're not an inconvenience to it. So, if you'll let me, allow me to convince you that finding bread friends is the best step towards living a life full of gratitude. Did you know that you get as many records of Jesus sharing food with his closest friends and followers as you do of him doing pretty much any of the other things he's famous for? So often, in fact, that he got himself a reputation with his religious contemporaries as being overindulgent with food and drink. It probably didn't help that Jesus got all sorts of people around tables with him, people who had drinking problems and gambling problems and sex addictions, and he just got them eating together. And boy, were they thankful to get a seat at that table. And Jesus not only did this throughout his earthly ministry, he got his followers to keep doing this after he had returned to his Father in heaven. And they did. So much so that they became famous for these meals where they would get together and give thanks to God for his grace and his love, and where they would share food with one another. You've heard of communion? The thing with the wine and the bread? Originally, it was just a meal where people shared bread with one another and talked about the good thing God had done by sending his son to save the world. It was called the Eucharist, which comes from the word Eucharisto. I give thanks. Why did these meals matter? Why did Jesus get people around tables? Why does sharing regular routines with people help us become more grateful? What's the link there? Because the people you share food and regular routines with the most become your closest family, don't they? Jesus actually described God's kingdom, God's family get-together, as a banquet where everyone gets a seat at the table. And boy, should we be thankful to get a seat at that table. And when we eat together with family, we process what needs processing, the good and the bad. We get help with our perspective as we share and become aware of others. There's just something about sharing together regularly that slows us down, helps us savour what we say and what others say to us, shifts us in the direction of who we were made to be, and shifts our relationships in the direction of gratitude and love. Now, it doesn't have to be a bread friend. It can be, I don't know, A girlfriend. It's just about that regular routine. Maybe it's a lunch hour you can spend with someone, or a Saturday morning run, or an evening dog walk, or a Thursday evening phone call, or a Sunday lunch, or even doing your regular Tesco shop with somebody else. But can I also encourage you to really consider the food thing? One, because everyone's got to eat, so it's guaranteed to be something you can share, but also because there is something unique about getting around a table with people. What difference do you think it would make to your levels of enjoyment and your levels of gratitude in the next season of your life to share regular routines with others as often as possible? What difference would it make to where you go first when the pressure rises and the stress levels are up and the pain surfaces? Do you think it would help you wake up a little more thankful for each day? And what difference would it make for a church community to be a place where people share regular routines with others as often as possible? How inviting would that be? How much more fun would we have? How much more would we laugh together? How much more do you think we'd be encouraged in our faith? How much easier would it be for people to walk through the tough stuff and the messy stuff? How much help would people have as they worked to break free of other routines and patterns of behaviour which were meant to cause pleasure but really have been causing pain? So maybe a good question the next time you're in need of a pick-me-up, or even right this second as you watch this video, is this: what will I be grateful for tomorrow? Or better, who will I be grateful for tomorrow? And then invite them round, invite them out. Or just invite them into what you're experiencing. You don't want to wake up groaning about what has been and dreading what will be. You want to wake up tomorrow morning saying, thank you, God, for what has gone before and whatever lies ahead. So do what you need to do to find your bread friends who can help you process, who give you a good perspective, and who you can be grateful with and for. Don't panic. The skeptic teaches us the simplicity of it. Just share a regular routine with somebody else, and you'll be grateful that you did. That is how your Heavenly Father has wired you to experience pleasure that lasts, to get back to enjoying what is truly good in life. And it's good to be a skeptic of anything that offers less. It's a good move to make for the next season of your life.